The envelope came in mid-April, thick stock with gold trim glinting faintly beneath the afternoon sun. I held it for a moment longer than I needed to, tracing the embossed edge with a thumb calloused by paperwork more than lumber. The name on the front was mine. The sender, Southern Pine University, where my brother Rhett would be graduating next month. Inside a tri-folded program nestled beside a glossy photo of smiling seniors in cap and gown. Rhett was front and center. He always had good posture. The invitation was formal, pristine. It even smelled like money paper soaked in the faint tang of toner and perfume. I read the seating chart, each name printed in tiny serifed font. Geneva's name was there bold as brass. My name was not. I flipped the page over once, then twice, then back. I searched the margins, the bottom row, the overflow sheet. Maybe I'd been missed in error. Maybe. Or maybe someone thought I shouldn't be there. Someone with access to decisions. The mail carrier downstairs had said earlier, "Always thought you'd be the one running that company." I had just nodded, too tired to explain the difference between a clean exit and a quiet erasure. I'd made peace with being forgotten, or so I thought. Back upstairs, I reached for a box I hadn't touched in years. It was labeled Kane, 1998-2016. The letters nearly faded into the cardboard. Dust rose like old ghosts when I opened it. Inside, meeting minutes, glossy brochures, branded pens, a dry cleaning tag from a gala 10 years ago. I found the photo last. A board meeting 2 weeks before I left. Everyone in tuxedos. I was at the end of the table, caught in shadow, my face half lit, half gone. On the back of the frame, a small tape read, "Remove before printing." I laughed without sound, the kind of laugh that stays in your chest. It didn't sting anymore, not much. But I did close the box, slowly brushing my fingers over the fraying edge of a suit sleeve. I hadn't worn it since. I still remembered that night black tie gala for the company's 25th anniversary. Everyone had a speech. Everyone but me. Geneva gave hers first, sipping gin from a teacup and calling it grace. Rhett talked about the Kane legacy. I had sat quietly, feeling the undercurrent shift beneath the polished floors. 1 month later, I was out. No firing, just removed from the calendar. My old laptop still worked mostly. I booted it up, logged into the internal company site. Surprisingly, my guest login still gave access. I searched for the event. There it was, Southern Pine Class of 2024 Family List. I clicked. Scroll, scroll. My name, Ellis Kane, was listed under status inactive. Not cleared for official family list. No comment section, just a quiet footnote to a decade gone missing. Just then, a cream-colored card slipped out from behind the photo. It landed on the floor face up. A name printed in navy blue script, H. Drake. Westwood Coffee. No time wasted. I recognized the name. I hadn't heard it in years. I sat on the floor, knees bent, card in hand. Outside, cicadas rasped like clock gears winding up spring. Inside, the ceiling fan above me hummed its dull rhythm. I traced the crease in the card with the edge of my fingernail. Some people write you out with pens, others with silence. In the back of the closet behind winter coats and boxes of forgotten ambitions hung the suit. It waited like a silent witness, creased, slightly bowed under its own weight, untouched for nearly a decade. My fingers hovered over it before I pulled the plastic covering aside. The shoulder pads had collapsed and the silver sheen looked like tarnished moonlight. There was a faint stain near the collar, coffee maybe, or adrenaline. The dry cleaning slip still clung to the tag May 18th, 2016. That was 2 days after the last time I wore it. 2 days after I stopped being a cane. I didn't pull it down immediately, just stared. My closet was mostly storage now, boxes stacked with things that didn't matter enough to unpack, but not trivial enough to throw away. That suit, though, wasn't just cloth. It was the final remnant of a version of me no one else seemed to miss. I turned and walked to the kitchen, half hoping the moment would pass. The apartment was quiet save for the low hum of the fridge and the hallway light flickering out of rhythm. Somewhere in the corner, the frame from yesterday's box sat on a pile of old mail. My image half-cropped in shadow. I saw myself more clearly in that blur than in the mirror. I leaned against the counter and let my mind wander right back to the boardroom. Kane Lumber, May 2016. Blinds drawn morning sun trying to push its way through the slats. Walnut table polished to a shine. Boone Kane sat at the head immovable as a monument. Geneva, perfectly upright, flipped through a slim file labeled Internal Financial Integrity. Notes. I remembered clearing my throat, heart tapping its own code against my ribs. There's a discrepancy, I had said, pointing to 2 line items that didn't match their transfer receipts. Geneva didn't even glance up. You're accusing your own department? No, I replied. I'm asking for clarity. That's what internal control is for. Boone's voice broke the silence. Words matter, Ellis. And we don't air family weakness. Silence again, this time thick, purposeful. I still remember how the AC vent whistled faintly overhead like a kettle boiling where no one noticed. For the sake of the company's reputation, Geneva said softly, We'll call this a voluntary transition. Damage control. Nothing personal. That was the day I packed the suit. The same week Mabel had a school recital. I still hear the voicemail she left Dad, just tell me you're coming this time. Even if it's just the last 5 minutes. I never made it. By then, I was already halfway packed, halfway gone. Now, back in the present, the apartment seemed smaller. I stepped toward the closet again. My hand trembled slightly as I took down the hanger. The suit drooped against my chest. I slipped it on. It fit like memory, tight in all the wrong places, sleeves too short for the man I'd become. I turned toward the mirror. My face, older, wearier, stared back. I buttoned the front once, then again. Muscle memory. Regret has a routine. Buzz. My phone lit up. Unknown number. I picked up. Westwood Coffee. 7 p.m., the voice said. Don't dress fancy. I looked down. The silver threads still caught the light just barely. The suit was already halfway on. Some legacies don't die. They fray. Westwood Coffee smelled like old wood and older regrets. I recognized the scent before I spotted him. Hollis Drake sat near the window, hands folded over a leather folio, the light catching the edge of his silver watchband. He looked smaller than I remembered, thinner around the face shirt collar, just a bit too wide. Same booth, Mr. D, the waitress asked as she passed. He nodded without speaking. I slid into the opposite seat. No handshake. Just silence between us, broken only by the rattle of a freight train passing in the distance. He finally looked up. I signed your name for the last time, Hollis said. It's yours now if you want it. I didn't speak. You're still cautious, he added. Good, you'll need that. Hollis explained what I didn't want to hear. Southern Pine University had nearly folded in 2020. The endowment was dry enrollment down. The board was ready to sell off land and merge. Hollis had made calls, shuffled numbers, and hidden his trail. Through a blind trust, he had rerouted enough funds to keep the university afloat. But to protect the institution, he needed a name with legacy, a Kane name. My name. You were out of the picture. Perfect for the role. No one would suspect, he said. And let's face it, they didn't want the Kane with cufflinks. He slid an envelope across the table. The flap was sealed with wax, slightly yellowed at the corners. Inside, ownership-proof transfer papers and a letter from his late partner, handwritten and careful. You're the controlling silent owner, he said. Have been for 2 years. I blinked. The hum of the cafe seemed to recede for a moment. Even the brass fan above us seemed to pause mid-rotation. He reached for the espresso in front of him. Still full. Untouched. The rim glistened with condensation, a fine ring like a clock's ghost tick. I unfolded the letter first. The handwriting looped with age. It wasn't long. Just a few paragraphs of thanks and hope. One day it said you'll remember why you were the right choice. My hand trembled slightly as I set it down. The weight of the suit on my shoulders suddenly felt different. Less armor, more skin. Why me? I asked finally. Hollis smiled, faint and dry. Because you never fought for power. Just truth. That's rare. Outside, a train clattered past. We both looked away from each other, then back again. I know about the photo, he said. The cropped one. Geneva made the call. Boone let her. I didn't flinch. I'd already mourned that chapter. He gestured to the envelope. This is the beginning of another. You can step in. Or walk away. I reached into the envelope again and found a smaller note folded twice. It was from the university's dean, Mr. Kane. We would be honored if you attended this year's graduation. Quietly, of course. Your presence means more than any speech. So they knew. Or at least the ones who mattered did. You'd do it differently than they did, Hollis said. That's why I kept the signature for you. I nodded eyes on the espresso cup still untouched. The light from the window lit its surface like a coin. Hollis leaned forward. Will you wear the same suit again? I looked down at the creases in my sleeves, the tight fit at the ribs, the threadbare lining I hadn't replaced. No other would fit, I replied. Some things cling not because they should, but because they remember. The auditorium air smelled of pride and perfume. Rows of folding chairs stretched in clean formation, punctuated by red banners swaying gently under ceiling fans. I entered through the side door unnoticed at first until Geneva turned. Her eyes caught mine and narrowed just enough to register disapproval without disrupting the line of her public smile. You'll find no seat with our name, she murmured, leaning close as she glided past. The scent of her perfume, sharp citrus and steel, lingered longer than her words. I kept walking. The suit, pressed as best as I could manage, caught glances. It shimmered under the overhead lights, not with elegance, but with age. A student in the third row nudged his friend and laughed. Security might stop that guy, he said loud enough for it to land. No one stopped me. I passed a folded seating chart near the backstage table, scribbled in pencil next to Ellis Kane Observer, no seat number, no designation, just a name, barely. Rhett stood near the stage, straightening his robe. He didn't look my way. Geneva kissed his cheek, whispering something I couldn't hear, though her eyes darted in my direction. Mabel stood off stage, headset looped around one ear, flipping through cue cards. Her eyes caught mine. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Her fingers hesitated on the mic switch. The ghost of a frown appeared and vanished just as fast. The dean rehearsed quietly, standing beside the podium. He glanced up, nodded once. I took a spot in the last row beside a fire exit. The air here was cooler and the shadows deeper. A chair with Guest 001 printed on a card sat untouched in the front row right beneath the edge of the stage. The ceremony began. Names were called. Applause echoed like wind chimes in rhythm. Mortarboards dipped in gratitude and pride. Parents leaned forward with phones outstretched. Rhett stepped across the stage, shook hands, grinned for photos. His steps were practiced, his expression a blend of nerves and polish. Geneva clapped slow and deliberate eyes, sweeping the audience to register whose gaze followed hers. When the last name faded, the dean returned to the mic. He cleared his throat. Before we conclude, one special thanks. The room held its breath. Programs rustled. A baby whimpered in row 5. Geneva turned her head slightly, brows tightening. Rhett looked confused, almost as if the script had gone off book. Mabel's hand hovered over the audio controls. She didn't move. The dean looked past the crowd, to the one who kept our doors open when no one else could. The spotlight inched across the stage, then drifted slowly down the steps, and paused. There was a moment where it searched the audience like a question unasked, and then it found me. I sat still. The suit shimmered faintly under the distant glow, silver threads catching light like old film. The same suit. The same cut. The applause that followed was hesitant like rain on tin. Some turned their heads to see what the dean meant. Others remained facing forward, unsure of where to look. Geneva's lips didn't move. Her hands stayed in her lap. Rhett's smile faltered. Mabel looked down. But I didn't blink. Some acknowledgments don't need a spotlight. They just need not to be erased. I didn't expect silence to be so loud. But when the dean said my name, the applause stopped mid-breath. For a moment the entire hall held its posture, hands mid-clap, mouths half open. Then a murmur rippled through the rows, the kind that carries more weight than thunder. Geneva's fingers crushed her paper coffee cup. The sound was small, but I heard it from across the room. On the screen behind the dean, a slide advanced. It read, "In grateful memory, Trustee E. Kane 2020, restructuring." I didn't move. I stood where I was by the exit, hands folded in front of me. The dean continued. "Southern Pine owes its survival to an anonymous benefactor who during our most difficult year made sure no employee was laid off, no student left without support." He paused, let the silence build. "Today we recognize him properly." I looked at the floor. The suit felt heavier somehow. Its seams tugged gently at my ribs as if memory had weight. "You know him as Ellis Kane," the dean said. "He has quietly held controlling interest in our institution since 2019. Gasps scattered the room like loose paper in wind. People whispered to each other, some nodding toward the back, others squinting as if they had misheard. Rhett stared at me from the front row, a line of sweat breaking at his brow. He gripped his graduation program too tightly, creasing the pages. A doodle of a light bulb and some initials bled into the corner. Geneva didn't look up. Her jaw clenched. I could see the delicate white of her knuckles through the crushed wax of her cup. He declined, naming rights the dean continued. He asked instead for a scholarship fund, one that honors those behind the scenes. In his words, for the workers who are never mentioned. Someone in the second row said, "Is that true?" The dean nodded. He never asked for thanks, but today we offer it anyway. Then he looked toward me. "Mr. Kane, would you care to say a few words?" For a moment, the room turned eyeballs' breath's attention all tilted toward the man in the old silver suit. Rhett turned fully now, eyes locking with mine. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" he asked, voice low. It wasn't accusatory, just raw. I didn't move, didn't step forward yet. I didn't need anyone to know I said. The spotlight shifted. I felt the beam catch my suit again, still wrinkled at the seams, still shining with memory more than fabric. The same light that bathed valedictorians now pressed on old decisions. Geneva didn't rise. Her program lay curled on her lap like a leaf too long under glass. Mabel offstage touched her headset but said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward the podium, then toward me. No cue, no gesture, just readiness. I took one slow step forward. The air no longer buzzed with disbelief. It simmered like heat rising off pavement after rain. Some truths don't arrive like thunder. They arrive when the storm passes. I stepped up. The mic squeaked. I adjusted it not because of height, but because it was crooked. A pause followed, the kind that stretches long enough to notice every cough, every shuffle, every hesitation in the crowd. The sunlight filtered through the stained glass dome above, casting fractured light over the stage. It fell in fragments on the floor like memories I hadn't sorted. My suit caught the beam again. I didn't smooth it down. I let it wrinkle. This suit, I said slowly, was laughed at. Someone chuckled. It died quickly. I wore it the day I lost everything. And today to remind me that everything was never what they said it was. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was awake. In the front row, Mabel clutched a notebook. From here I could see the edge of the pages. Blank. I looked over the audience. Geneva stared into her lap. Rhett's collar had dampened under his robe. I don't have a speech, but I remember something Hollis Drake told me once. I paused. I let the name land. Sometimes dignity wears hand-me-downs. A ripple, almost like a sigh, moved across the hall. The dean smiled not wide, but with the kind of approval that doesn't need teeth. I stepped back from the mic. "I don't want applause," I added. "Just maybe remember the person not in the family photo." For a beat, no one moved. The microphone reverb faded into the rafters. A flag waved near the stage, its pole catching a glint of morning light. Mabel started clapping. Just once, then, again. Someone behind her joined, then more. But I was already walking down the steps. The applause grew, but I didn't look back. Shadows had lengthened across the marble. The sun was shifting. The ceremony wasn't over, but something had ended. I reached the side door. Behind me, footsteps. Soft, steady. Mabel. She didn't speak. She just followed. And somehow that was louder than any speech I could have made. "You kept it?" Mabel asked, stepping into my apartment. Her eyes locked on the hanger near the window where the silver suit now hung beneath the afternoon light. It swayed slightly as if remembering the applause from the morning. "I didn't know where else to put it," I said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. The handle of one had a small crack, old but still intact like most of my life. Mabel ran her fingers down the sleeve. "It still smells like cedar." I nodded. "It used to hang in the company vault. Now it's just here." We sat. No music. Just the hum of the fan and the occasional rattle from the pawn shop sign downstairs. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" she asked quietly. "I didn't want you to inherit bitterness," I said. "Some things are better kept out of stories." My phone buzzed. "Hollis," I answered on speaker. "Scholarship fund set," he said. "Goes live this fall. Quiet, just like we planned." "You're still pulling strings," I said. "Retired fingers," he replied. "Still got reach." Mabel looked at me, then the suit. "It should be seen," she said. "Displayed, I mean, in the student center. But no plaque. Just the suit." I raised an eyebrow. "No name." "Only this," she replied. "Worn by the one they forgot." We carried it over together that weekend. A maintenance worker helped mount the case-tempered glass low lighting. The sleeve was angled just so, a reflection of quiet dignity. I noticed the lining as we adjusted it, taped inside a photo of me and Hollis at the 2002 gala. I hadn't remembered putting it there. The glass closed with a soft click. We didn't speak much afterward. We sat on a bench outside the new center. The bricks still smelled like dust and ambition. The sun warmed our backs. In front of us, the glass case caught a shaft of late light, casting the suit's shadow along the wall. Mabel reached for the cracked handle mug I'd brought in my satchel. She wrapped both hands around it like it was worth more than it looked. "I might want to write this story someday," she said finally. I didn't answer. I just looked forward past the glass, past the memory, and then I nodded. They asked me to speak again. I declined. Some stories work best without a narrator. It was the first crisp morning of fall. Folding chairs lined the quad in uneven rows, their legs sinking slightly into the grass. A banner flapped above the stage. "Welcome, class of 2024. Mabel stood at the podium. Her voice was clear, practiced, but warm. She wore a soft gray coat and held the mic like it mattered. There was a man, she said, who wore the same clothes twice, not because he had to, but because he believed in second chances. No one in the audience looked toward me. That was by design. The students in the front row nodded, some curious, others distracted. One boy's jacket was too big. It fell past his wrists. A small thing, but I noticed. The dean said a few words next. He mentioned the scholarship, the Kane Quiet Start Fund, but not the man behind it. That was by request. 3 first-year students stood as their names were read. They smiled, shuffled forward, and shook hands with the dean. One of them looked at me directly. "Thanks, sir," he said low enough that only I could hear. "I know who you are." I gave a small nod. Nothing more. After the ceremony, I stayed back while others moved toward the refreshments. The coffee in my paper cup had gone cold. I drank it anyway. The wind picked up. It lifted the edges of the banner, revealing the brass frame beneath. Mabel walked past, gave a small wave, then turned to answer someone's question. I stood, walked the long way home. Back in the apartment, the afternoon light had shifted. I set the keys down in the bowl by the door. In the corner where the suit once hung, the hanger swayed slightly. Empty. I smiled. Not everything old needs to be kept, I said aloud, though no one was there to hear it. And for once, that felt just right. The hanger by the window still sways gently when the breeze rolls in, though now it holds nothing. The suit is gone, but its shape lingers in the air like a memory that's no longer bitter. Sometimes what we keep says less about who we are than what we finally choose to let go. Dignity isn't stitched into the fabric we wear, it's in the quiet choices no one claps for. And second chances rarely come wrapped in applause. They come in silence and cold coffee and walking away before the ovation. Has life ever handed you a second chance in disguise? If it has, or you hope it might drop a memory below or share this with someone still carrying an old suit,